How's it going, everybody? It is so good to see you all here today. Let's get right into it, shall we? Welcome to the NPS Surveys How to Harness Promoter, Passive, and Detractor Feedback webinar. Before we embark on this journey, why don't I introduce myself? Hello, my name is Maciek, and I'm the Digital Customer Success Manager here at Survicate. I'll be your host and presenter throughout this webinar. And the goal for today is to equip you with NPS knowledge and possibly superpowers that will truly help you decode and make sense of all kinds of feedback. So, whether it's your high fiving promoters, fence sitting passives, or frowny face detractors, I'll cover it all for you today. Let's get this thing started. Almost, right? First up, let's take care of some housekeeping. I can feel you're already asking it, and the answer is yes. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent to you after we finish up. That way, you can go over everything that's been covered at your own pace, whenever you want, however you want. At the end, we'll have a 15-minute Q&A, so feel free to write in your questions in the chat whenever you feel like it, even right now. Go for it. And if I don't get to your question, no worries, because after we finish up everything, I'll reach out to you personally with an answer. So, what are we doing today? What's the rundown? Here's how it's looking. First up, we'll have a little section called What is Survicate? So, if you haven't heard of Survicate yet, where have you been, right? I'll give you a quick rundown of why it's the leading survey platform to help you gather and act on customer insights. Then we'll have what is NPS. If you're new to NPS or simply need to refresh your memory, I'll share with you a quick overview of what the Net Promoter Score is and why it matters. The power of promoters. We'll talk about the respondents who enjoy what you've been putting out and are more than happy to tell others about it, right? But more importantly, you'll learn how to harness these positive sentiments within your own business strategy. Cracking the code of passives. So this is the middle ground between love and indifference. You'll learn how to tip the scales in your favor. Essentially, I'll go over what you can do with neutral feedback. And then we'll go into navigating detractors. So yeah, I've got some tricks up my sleeves to help you flip the script and win them over, as well as what you can learn from them, right? That's the key here. Today we're learning from all of our feedback, right? This is what this is all about. Tips and tricks. Yeah, I'll spill the beans on some cool tips and tricks to ensure you're truly getting the most out of your NPS survey strategy. And last up, of course, we have the Q&A. So ask me anything, kind of. I'll be taking 15 minutes to answer your questions about today's topic. All right, so let's get to it. What is Survicate? Well, Survicate is an effortless survey software. That answered that question, but let's dig a little deeper. Yeah, simply put, we simplify the scaling customer feedback process. And how do we do that? Well, we make it easy for you to start creating your own surveys using our intuitive drag and drop creator. Besides that, we make it easy to automate your workflows, ensuring you're getting a constant stream of valuable insights. And lastly, we make it a breeze for you to integrate your favorite tools with it. So, if you have a digital product or running a service and are looking for an effortless software for getting continuous customer insights at scale, give us a try. It's free to get started. All right, let's keep going. Yeah, so what is NPS? Well, first of all, it's short for Net Promoter Score, if you're truly new to the term. And it's a metric used by companies to measure customer satisfaction and loyalty. Moreover, NPS is most commonly assessed with a survey containing the golden question of how likely are you to recommend us to someone like you? And this is where respondents taking the survey can choose a score going from 0 to 10. Now, those who end up choosing 0 to 6 fall into the NPS detractors category. Simply put, these are unhappy customers. They are far less likely to recommend your company and they might even badmouth it to others. Then we have 7 to 8 who are passives. They're what I'd call lukewarm about your company, right? They're neither unhappy, but they're also not super excited either. And 9 to 10 are promoters. These folks love the product you've been putting out, and they would shout it from the rooftops if you let them. Now, before I show you how to calculate this score, I wanted to give you an overview of the three types of NPS surveys that you'll come across. First up, we got the transactional NPS survey. These are usually sent immediately after a specific customer interaction, and the goal is to assess the customer's experience within that specific interaction. So, this could be right after a purchase or maybe after contacting customer support. for example. And the question usually asked here would be something like, based on your recent experience, how likely are you to recommend our product to a friend or colleague? Next up, we have the relational NPS survey. And these focus on the overall long term relationship between the customer and your company. These surveys are often sent at regular intervals, so most often quarterly or annually, basically to help gauge the customer's general loyalty and satisfaction. And the question you'll see here is typically something like, how likely are you to recommend our platform to a friend or colleague? And last up, we have employee NPS. And this one is designed to assess how engaged and satisfied employees are within the workplace. So, yeah, now these can also be sent out at various times depending on the company's goals and needs. So, maybe when you're onboarding new hires or after performance reviews, right? Yeah, so that wraps up the three types of NPS survey types. And for today, we'll be focusing more on transactional and relational NPS feedback. So let's continue. So, how do we calculate this score? Well, to calculate your NPS score, simply subtract the percentage of distractors from the percentage of promoters, and voila, you got your NPS score. And this score will range from negative 100 to plus 100. Something to take note of here is that the net promoter score is not expressed as a percentage, but as an integer, right? So it lies between negative 100, as I mentioned, and positive 100. For example, so let's say we've got 50% of our respondents are promoters and 20% are detractors. So 15 minus 20 equals 30. That's your NPS score. Now, what can you get out of this score? What are the benefits? Well, it's a great way to gauge customer satisfaction, growth potential, customer experience quality, brand perception, even organizational performance. So, now that you've caught up with what NPS is and how you can benefit from it, how about we go over the different ways you can actually approach the feedback that you're receiving through your NPS surveys? Okay, let's do this. As we've already established, all feedback is unique and none of it should go to waste. And of course, this includes promoters or people who have answered 9 to 10 on your NPS surveys. So let's start with the power of promoters. Promoters are your happy customers, right? So what happens often is companies simply take them for granted, thinking, hey, these customers love us, they're happy, that's good enough, right? Wrong. Ignoring promoters is a huge mistake because the truth is, even your happiest customers can jump ship if your competitor is providing a better product or experience, or they simply don't feel as if they're being valued as a customer. So, flip that mindset around and know that acting on positive feedback is a sure way to support your marketing efforts and it will also increase customer loyalty. So, let's go over a few ways of how that works using promoters. First off, a customer who is legitimately satisfied with what you've put out is most likely looking forward to the new stuff you got in store as well. So why not take this opportunity to organize a promotional campaign for happy customers, right? Let's say you're in e-commerce, you can suggest some related products that they might enjoy. This is a great opportunity to offer discounts on their purchase to show that you truly care for their loyalty and commitment to sticking around, right? And believing in your product. The goal here is to truly make your customers feel special because, well, they are. So let them know about maybe some upcoming products you've got in store or sales that are coming or even features you're looking to release. It's the perfect way to turn happy customers into brand advocates who will hopefully maybe boost your business with referrals down the line, right? Another thing you can do is, well, yeah, this is actually a great chance to showcase customer satisfaction on your website using legit testimonials. It's a great way to flaunt what you've got, so to speak, right? What better way to convince potential customers than an honest and well written customer story on your website, right? Customer testimonials are the best kind of advertisement in the long run. They will bring you greater return than any ad campaign. Now, let's talk a little about the power of promoters and review pages. Customers these days want to see how others are raving about you before they commit. So naturally, if your prospects see that customers have had an excellent experience with your company, chances are that they will feel more comfortable becoming a customer as well. In fact, 76 of people trust online reviews as much as recommendations from family and friends. We call that being social proof, right? So what you should be doing is actually directing your promoters to various third-party review sites like maybe G2 to follow them, to allow them to express themselves and scream at the top of their lungs about the greatness of what your business has to offer, right? Even more, you can actually use Survicate in our thank you screen as a CTA to direct your promoters straight to a review site as part of your NPS survey. So check this out. All right, so we've got our NPS survey open up here in Survicate, as you can see, and the goal here is to get our promoters who are very happy with their product directly to our G2 review site so they can pass on that positive feedback to the rest of the world. So I start off by adding a thank you screen question type, and we'll need a message to go along with that. So how about something like leave a G2 review and let the world know why you love us. Yeah. And then we'll go into the settings. And here's where we can create the button so they'll know what to click. We'll add the link to the website here. Open in a new tab. No, we don't want that. Okay, perfect. Everything looks great. Something important to note here as well is the fact that we're actually using our logic feature within this survey to create a personalized experience by routing our respondents to different questions based on their answers. So in this case, if we go to the NPS question and we go to logic, we can see that the passives go straight to the third question, and after that, they simply finish up the survey. While our promoters um, they're met with the fourth question and led to the thank you screen that we just created. So let's quickly test that out to see if it works properly. I'll just grab the link here of the survey, paste that into, and there we have it. Let's see. Let me just answer that. Perfect. No. Okay, and here we are. Here's our thank you screen, and we hit submit, and it takes us straight to our G2 review site. Perfect. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. Also, don't forget mm, about incentives. It will help them leave an online review. In my example that I just showed you, I simply just invited them to leave a review at the end. However, you can incentivize in different ways, right? You can offer a free book or maybe bonus educational content. Things like that will get them more inspired to click on your call to action. But also consider that it's not always a good idea, right? Meaning, make sure you read the room before doing so. Additionally, some review sites have strict rules for customer incentivized reviews, so look into that beforehand. All right, moving on to passives, or more specifically, what can you do with neutral customer feedback? Remember, that's when your respondents are answering with a 7 or 8 when taking your NPS survey. And the thing about this type of feedback is it can be pulled in a good or bad direction. That's why it's important to tread lightly here, right? Essentially, depending on your attitude towards your respondents, passives could show up as promoters or detractors next time around. Here are some things that you can do to crack the code of passives. First up, ask follow up questions. This means that even if it's a neutral response, be polite and thank your customers for taking the time to actually fill out your survey. Remember, a 7 out of 10 is better than a 0, but instead of just thanking them, try some follow-up questions so you can get some crucial insights from them, right? While you're at it. So let's say that they give you a 7, easily follow that up with a question like what can we do to make your experience better, or what other companies do you admire for their customer experience and what can we learn from them? Also maybe something like what can we do to get a 10 from you next time, right? And just like with the demonstration that I just showed you, you can use logic to take your respondents right to these follow-up questions, right? The important thing is to listen to their feedback and actually make the effort to respond. And it's these type of questions that will show your passive respondents that you truly value their opinion. Another trick you can use when following up with passive respondents is using positive aspects of their feedback and thanking them for their honesty. Always acknowledge that you took the time to read their feedback, right? And highlight what they liked. While you're at it, and you see that there's an opportunity to do so, give them a helping hand, right, with the issue that they're having. Don't be afraid to send them educational documents or case studies to help them reach a solution quicker. The thing is, and speaking as a digital customer success manager, some customers simply don't know the full potential of your product, and it's a great way to inspire them to find out more about the possibilities that await, right? Bring value with every interaction. Yeah, that I put this down as a bonus, but this is very important. Bring value with every interaction. It's something worth mentioning, especially when you're responding to feedback. And this brings us to our detractors. They're the least enthusiastic about your services or product and will give you a score of 0 to 6 in your NPS survey. Let's talk about what you can do with this kind of feedback. Now, NPS is a great way to identify at risk clients, and this most certainly rings true for detractors. And as with all feedback, the good thing about it is you can act on it immediately. And this is the general idea. So, for example, do you pay attention to how companies respond to reviews on sites such as G2? Oh, I bet you do, right? 87% of consumers who read reviews also read how businesses respond to reviews, right? So, never getting back to negative feedback or responding in an aggressive manner can truly affect the perspective of your prospects toward your company. Going even further, not reacting to negative feedback can lose you a customer. It's not just about new customers, but existing ones as well. Don't forget that. That's why it's important to also know how to respond to negative customer feedback, allowing you to win back detractors' hearts in a way, right? And just as this slide says, it's truly an art form. First and foremost, mm, personalization goes a long way. So, whenever possible, address your customers by their name. It makes for a great first impression. Also, feel free to apologize and sympathize with your response as well, but also be aware that if the feedback itself is unfounded, don't feel like you need to apologize, but make sure to acknowledge the feedback and their feelings nonetheless. And when responding, actively seek out to promote good remarks. So, something like, um, we are normally known for a great service. That's why it's disappointing for us all that you didn't receive the same experience, right? Something like that. And always act dedicated to the solution. Do your best to help the customer you're responding to and explain the steps you'll take together to solve their issue. That way, there's a clear path laid out on how you'll turn their frown upside down. Don't forget about the timing when you're reaching out to your unsatisfied respondents as well. Here's a fun little statistic. 81% of customers say that they were willing to leave feedback if they knew they would get a quick response. What does this mean? Well, responding to your customers fast is the best thing you can do to make them feel that their voices are heard, right? Ideally, you'll want to respond within 1 to 2 days. So even if they give you a 6 by responding to them quickly, you'll create the sense that you're actively considering their feedback, right? So make sure that you don't leave negative feedback unanswered. Ignoring them will have a compounding effect for sure. Now, before you even start collecting responses, you could also consider establishing a task allocation and automation system. That way, you can stay on top of the feedback that you're getting. A great way we like to handle this is using our custom email notifications to trigger your team's inbox. That way, you can truly act on your respondents' feedback right away, the second it happens. Now, the thing about your detractors is you can win them back by asking them for a second chance. Here's what I mean. Say that you've got a respondent that received their NPS survey, gave you a 5, and mentioned an issue they were having. Wow, you check the message and you know that this is a common issue. Help them fix it and maybe offer them a discount to come back and give your services another try, seeing how you fixed it, right? In fact, you can use many incentives to win a customer back, but remember that the incentive should not only be related to your product, but also provide an increased value. So don't make it weird and offer a random fruit basket or some book that they'll never read. Make it relevant and useful. In fact, let's expand a little on these incentives. Here's five that you can use with detractors to possibly smooth things out. First up, we got reward points. So if you have a reward system in place where customers receive points by maybe buying products from you, use these reward points as an incentive when a customer is unsatisfied with an aspect of your product. Right? You can also offer a discount on their next purchase. Discounts come in handy when your customer is generally happy about your product but not satisfied with a particular thing. Right? So maybe that's why you received a lower score from them in the first place. This not only makes your customers happy, but also helps them become repeat customers, right? Number three, we got offer free products. Yeah. If your customer's complaint is a product related issue, maybe they received a damaged product or an incorrect one, offer to send the product in question free of charge. Why not? You can also offer to upgrade some features for them for a free trial. So let's say a customer faces an issue that you can solve by upgrading some features within your services. Offer this upgrade as a trial, right? This will not only solve your customer's current problem, but also have them pay to continue using the upgrade as long as they like it. And finally, offer them a refund. Sometimes all you can do to fix the customer experience at this point is to offer them a full or partial refund, depending on the situation. Although a refund is a tough choice for many companies, it's worth it to keep your customers happy in the long run. Okay, this one's my personal favorite. Ask your detractors to change their feedback. That's right. If you've resolved their issue and you're sure that your customer's experience is now positive, why not ask your customer to change their feedback? Makes sense, right? Just try not to do it publicly if it's on G2 or something. You don't want to sound too desperate. Look, the truth is, if your customer give you a second chance, they could be willing to change their feedback as well. If the original feedback is somewhere public, you can privately, like maybe through an email, ask your customer to remove or even change it if it's possible. If it's not public, it's still worth asking the customer how they would rate their experience now after the fact, right? Remember, customer feedback is vital to developing your business strategy, so don't be afraid to ask again. And if none of the strategies I just mentioned work, meaning you don't manage to get them to turn the negative feedback into positive, don't worry. Customers will always see positive feedback over negative ones. So, a great way to overcome negative feedback is to gain more positive feedback, right? Hopefully, with the tips that I shared with you, you'll have more knowledge and ways in turning passives and detractors into promoters, giving you an opportunity to score more positive feedback, swaying the balance for the better. Let's keep going. So, yeah, ultimately, if you don't take the necessary actions to fix the problems or at least communicate with the customer in some way today, one negative feedback can lead to more negative feedback in the blink of an eye. 32% of customers say they would stop doing business with a brand after one negative experience. That's one third of customers lost due to a single bad experience. So make sure to identify the root cause of the negative feedback that you're getting so the problem doesn't occur again. So if you notice patterns in your data, meaning there are issues you hear from your customers about more than once, it's wise to go through these issues and examine them in depth. It may not seem like it now, but even minor issues could be the tip of the iceberg, right? Even more minor problems will lead to friction in the customer journey and point to bottlenecks preventing your company from developing. So take all of the complaints seriously and act on them no matter the severity of it. So, if you've been paying attention, you probably noticed a lot of cool tips scattered throughout this webinar session, hopefully, meaning different ways you can approach the feedback you're getting, no matter if it's good or bad. However, there's a few tips I'd like to share with you that I think will take your NPS game to another level. So, let's see what we got for the first tip. Use open ended questions in your NPS surveys. Your NPS score provides you with a quick snapshot of customer sentiment. Yes, this is true. So, open ended questions let you gather even more detailed feedback to help you identify areas of improvement. Consider that. Next up, we got analyzing the data to find opportunities because gathering data is great, but analyzing and acting on it is what will truly bring all of this together. If your customers are constantly giving you low scores, take the steps to find out why. Yeah, this one. I've somewhat gone over this a little earlier. but it can't be stressed enough. Actively follow up with your customers. As we've learned, following up not only show that you value your customers' feedback, but it's also a big reason whether customers stay or not. And remember, once you get the response, you can provide updates to let customers know how their feedback has helped you improve your product, allowing you to close the feedback loop, right? You can even go as far as to offer them a reward for contributing to helping you improve your service or product. Combine it with other metrics. That's right. NPS works best when it's used alongside other metrics, basically giving you a comprehensive view of the customer experience. So this means use CSAT, which helps you gauge your customers' satisfaction with your company's products and services, customer effort score, so the ease of completing a specific task or interaction. And by measuring the customer effort score alongside NPS and CSAT, you can identify areas where customers are struggling and make improvements to reduce customer effort and thus increasing overall satisfaction, right? And don't forget about customer churn rate as well. A high churn rate could suggest that customers are leaving for reasons such as poor service, pricing, or competition. Find out, right? My final tip for you is to use integrations. You can integrate your favorite tools to streamline the entire NPS process. For example, you can use HubSpot, Klaviyo, Salesforce, or some other tool which you prefer. The best part is Survicate integrates with your favorite tools as well. This means you can essentially set up your integration workflow and receive continuous NPS customer feedback, allowing you to even automate the entire thing by sending follow ups to respondents, giving you more time to handle all other aspects of your business. Okay, so we've made it. Here we are. And there we have it. To put all this together, all of the feedback that you're getting from your NPS survey is valuable, right? Think of it as a compass that guides you through the customer satisfaction landscape. It shows you what you're doing right, where you need to step up your game, and what fires you need to put out, right? All right. So we took care of that. You've all been so patient. How about we get to your questions? Let's start the Q&A. Let's do this.
All right, let me just get my slides over here. Come on, slides. Okay, so first up, let's see if we can take care of all those wonderful questions you all wrote in during the webinar registration process. There were so many questions, so thank you for that. Let's get right to it. The first question is how to deal with detractors with no comment. And this comes from Sunny. This is a great question. And the answer is you take what you get and you work with it, right? Let's start off with the good news. It's is that you actually got a response to your survey, so cherish that. A score is better than no score because it gives you something to work with, right? Makes sense. Now, detractors who don't leave comments can be a little more challenging since you don't have specific feedback to work with, right? But the good news is that you can still take the proactive steps that I covered during today's session to address their concerns. First and foremost, make sure to double check to make sure that you're actually encouraging respondents to share their feedback within your survey, right? This means that you're not ending the survey as soon as they put in a score, but actually allowing them to expand on their low score with more open-ended questions, right? Now, if a detractor doesn't leave any comment, well, you can always reach out to them with a personalized follow-up message, for example. Thank them for their feedback, acknowledge the low score, and let them know uh, you're interested in understanding their experience, right? You won't always get an answer, but the least you can do is invite them to an open discussion regarding their experience. All right, next question. Do you have any recommendations on how to increase the number of submissions? Okay, this is and how to increase the response rate. This is another batch of fine questions. Thank you for that one, Angela and Milada. I grouped these together since they were basically the same question. So the question is basically, how do I get more people to take my survey, right? I suppose this topic itself could be an entire webinar in itself, and it kind of was. Wink, wink. So what I do in this instance is actually invite you to check out a webinar I did a few weeks back called what was it called? Survicate 101, getting your first survey response, and you can find that on our webinar directory page, which Agnieszka, who's moderating our chat, will link you to that in the chat. Basically, in that I went over the importance of creating effective surveys and the process behind that, so things like making sure it's easy to take, optimizing the survey length, sending the survey at the right time, leveraging the right channels, and even offering incentives, right? Like I mentioned during the presentation. But yeah, basically, if you want to increase the number of submissions, there's no one secret answer, but you do need to make sure uh, the survey is at least easy to take, first and foremost, right? And engaging. And for that, I would highly recommend checking out that webinar. Remember, sometimes it's truly a matter of changing one or two things. Mm, Even your survey, the welcome message length could be a problem, you know. And also, Angela and Milada, if you would like, you can always reach out to me personally and share your surveys you're putting out, and I can give you some pointers should you need it. So yeah, hope that helps going forward. Let's go to the next question. Okay. I am curious to see how we can use efficiently neutral feedback. Yeah, this next question comes from Rabaglia. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If not, I do apologize. Yeah, as discussed today, this type of feedback can be pulled in a good or bad direction. That's why you should sort of be walking on eggshells when answering this type of feedback. But yeah, instead of thanking your passives, try some follow up questions while you still got them on the phone, so to speak. So if they gave you a 7, follow that up with what other companies maybe, what other companies do you admire for their customer experience, and what can we learn from them, or something like what can we do to get a 10 next time around, right? And of course, you can use our logic feature to take your respondents right to those follow up questions. But yeah, the most important thing you can do is listen to their feedback and take the effort to respond. Besides that, bring value with every interaction. I mentioned that earlier. So if you see an opportunity to send them more, for example, like, I don't know, educational content, do it. Like I mentioned earlier, some customers simply don't know the full potential of your product, and this is a great chance to showcase that. All right, moving on. Next question. Okay, this is a good one. They're all good questions, but this one's like personal. If you had to focus on one type of customer, promoter, detractor, passive, which one will it be and why? And this comes from Julia. And yeah, this is a great question. So thank you for that. Ultimately, a balanced approach that considers all three segments would be ideal here. But since the question is asking for one type of customer, I'll go with detractors simply because I feel like they give you a better chance to understand and resolve issues that could ultimately lead to churn, right? Additionally, personally, I like the challenge, so getting to the bottom of detractors would be my pick, but only because you made me choose. So thank you for that question. Next up, yeah, this there's a hiccup, but we're back. All right, so let's go back to the question that we were on. Best language to reach out to all three categories. At first, like I mentioned, this question was, yeah, I thought it meant like what language, meaning like English, Spanish, French. But then I realized you probably meant what kind of language type should you use when reaching out to different segments, right? Meaning promoters, passive, or detractors. So my answer to this is generally do your best to read the room, right? But as a general rule, if you're reaching out to promoters, express your gratitude, right? Use positive, affirming language, right? If you're reaching out to passives, be more neutral, express a genuine interest in understanding their concerns, right? Because ultimately, you're trying to get passives to provide more detailed feedback so you can sway them into becoming promoters down the line. Excuse me. And for detractors, well, I suppose it's best to use empathetic language here, right? Be understanding. And ultimately, it's your job to provide a clear path for some kind of resolution because you want to turn that negative experience into a positive one. So thank you, Raisa, for the question. Let's see what else we got. How can we track NPS at company level using Survicate? And the second part is how are other Survicate customers doing this by only using Survicate? This comes from Alex. Yeah, let's see, how would I even the first thing that I would recommend is based on other Survicate customers is running NPS surveys like through email, website, or mobile app, and track the NPS through and track the NPS over time in the analysis tab, right? And of course, how you run NPS depends on your business, right? Some customers run NPS twice a year, some do it quarterly, and some do it even monthly using different channels. Some of our customers have been known to build a dashboard, for example, in like BigQuery, for example, using data export API, so that everyone from the company can check NPS scores all in one place, right? Additionally, what I like to add here is that you can invite your teammates to Survicate. You get unlimited seats if you get on our enterprise plan. And there you can grant different permissions. That way, if your teammates just need to track, for example, NPS, they can have guest permissions to do so. So yeah, thank you, Alex, for this awesome question. We have a lot of questions, so thank you for doing that once again. Okay, what type of follow-up do you suggest performing after the NPS? For example, meeting to discuss clients' answers, informal surveys in between NPS periods. Okay, this comes from Laura. Thank you. Generally, following up by email or chat in some cases is the most effective and common way. Uh, this gives you, a chance to address any concerns right away while at the same time closing the feedback loop by implementing, improvements and letting your customers know it was done, right? Fun fact here, I actually know a customer that actually calls their detractors personally. It's a little old school, and I don't recommend doing this. But nevertheless, some companies still prefer getting even more personal with a personal phone call, right? So imagine that, right? You get a call like, "Hello, excuse me, is this Henry? Did you give us a 4 NPS rating? We would love to speak to you about that," right? Think about that. Some people do that. Why not, right? As long as it works. So thank you, Laura, for that question. What do we got? Do people like to receive many NPS from everyone? Should I come back to feedback or pretend it's anonymous? This comes from Juliana. And this is a two-parter, so let's go over each one quickly. First up, do people like to receive many NPS from everyone? Well, just like with anything, if individuals receive NPS surveys too frequently, it might become annoying for them and they might just simply ignore it. So, or give you a dishonest answer, right? Because if you're getting a survey you don't want to take, you might just be like, whatever, I don't care, 3, blah, blah, blah. Generally speaking, it's rather difficult to say how often you need to send out these surveys because the optimal time interval for each business would vary. For example, in Survicate, we tend to conduct NPS surveys every quarter, and this helps us evaluate our business decisions and plan our pipeline for the future. But yeah, businesses tend to send NPS surveys twice a year, quarterly, monthly for best results. So yeah, and the second part of that is, should I come back to feedback or pretend it's anonymous? Don't ever pretend. The answer to the answer to this is yes, you should come back to feedback. Get back to all feedback. And please never pretend it's anonymous. I hope by now we've learned something important, and that is all feedback is an opportunity for you to learn something and grow. Whether it's positive or negative or in between, it's always a chance to reach out to your customers and thank them for their time and use their feedback to make improvements where needed, depending on the degree of the feedback, right? So get back to all feedback. If somebody took the time to answer your survey, take the time to give back to them as well. Just manners. How to correctly interpret NPS results. This comes from Liana. Another great question. Yeah, besides the basics of actually knowing who the promoters, passives, and detractors are and how to calculate the NPS score, which I went over during the first portion of the webinar, there are a number of ways to correctly interpret your NPS results, but you can start by comparing your NPS score to industry benchmarks. And we've actually written a really cool blog post about this. So I'll get Agnieszka to link that in the chat now. But apart from that, make sure to analyze your scores more in depth, right? Notice the patterns. Do detractors sway more towards 0 or 6? Are they evenly distributed? Are there one or two things in particular that make customers detractors or passives, right? Is there a large chunk of passive that could easily be turned into promoters, right? Opportunities like that. Make sure to analyze these open-ended follow-up questions. They are a gold mine. Uh, yeah, you can use Survicate, for example, and take advantage of our word cloud to see which topics respondents are most interested in, for example. But yeah, in the end, remember that NPS is just one metric, as I mentioned during the tips and tricks. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's more valuable when used together with other performance indicators like CSAT, which will give you a more comprehensive view of customer satisfaction and loyalty. So those are the questions. But let's see if we can answer a couple of these chat questions as well. I see we have some. And the first question is, let me see here. Are we able to connect Salesforce to automate with Survicate? The answer to this question is yes, of course, we have native Salesforce integration that allows both to identify the respondents that answer your questions as well as map responses to their Salesforce fields directly to the respondents' profiles, right? This way you can easily track in Salesforce who's a detractor, who's a passive, and who's a promoter, and follow up with them, right? I hope that answered the questions. To Rananda, thank you for your question. And I believe we have uh, one more here. Let's see what we got. How can we, and should we, educate customers on NPS since customers usually are not aware that 8, for example, is a neutral score? Um, hmm. Yeah. Uh, for this one, I would say on each end of the NPS scale, we automatically add a description saying that 0 means, for example, the respondent's unlikely to recommend you to a friend, and 10 means they're very likely to recommend you your product or tool, right? Also, certificate questions allow you to add an introduction where you can additionally mention that if you're happy with us, please rate 9 or 10 or anything else along those lines. Yeah. So I hope that answered the question for you. Thank you for that awesome question. Uh, and there's another question, but I see Agnieszka answered in the chat. So thank you for answering that question. And the question was, is there a webinar about connecting Salesforce? And we do have a webinar for that. So check that out on our webinar directory page. All right. And that'll be our last question for today's session. If I didn't get to your question or if you have some later, I'll be personally reaching out to you. So be on the lookout for that or just write it in. Also, speaking of looking out for things, I'll be sending out a recording of this webinar to everyone that signed up. So look out for that in your inbox soon. I'm thinking probably tomorrow, if everything goes well. should be tomorrow. If you enjoyed this webinar, we've got more lined up for you down the line. We actually have a webinar directory page, as I talked about a little bit earlier, on our main page where you can cycle through previous webinars as well as sign up for future ones. So make sure to do that. I think we have our next one coming up in January, so be on the lookout for that. And this one will be involving HubSpot integration. Cool. So thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. This was awesome. I like this little thing we did where we allowed you to send in your questions during the registration part. I'll be doing that going forward. It's awesome. And I'd like to thank Agnieszka, who was with us on chat, moderating the whole time. So awesome job there. All right. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day. See you at the next one. Take care.